Beverly Hills, the show opens with all the ladies getting ready to attend Beau's sisterhood serenity soiree. And Beau's has gone all out for the event. She's got fluffy robes, great food, fancy drinks, and a bunch of men with muscles that are there just to massage everyone. Erica arrives first, and she's wearing an outfit that's perfect for a wellness day retreat. 5 minutes later, Kyle shows up, and she's wearing this tight body-hugging dress from like the early 2000s. 5 minutes later, Dorit is at the door, and she shows up wearing something very comfortable and very appropriate for a Serenity Day soiree. Dorit sits down, says hello to the women, and as soon as she clocks what Kyle's wearing, she says, "Oh, is that comfortable? Is that your comfy wardrobe?" And Erica turns to camera and says, "Oh, it looks like we're off to a great start." Then the rest of the gang arrives, and once they all get there, Beau's takes them into the kitchen to meet the chef, who happens to be a very good-looking guy. And these women suddenly turned into a pack of bitches in heat. They had no chill. Then Beau's takes them all out into the garden, where numerous pair of manly hands were just waiting to massage their troubles away and help them find that serenity that they're searching for. And for a split second, it looked like they may find it, but just as Garcelle was starting to relax, Dorit shows up right by her side and says, "I'm sorry to interrupt this beautiful moment, but I'd like to talk to you about what happened the other night at the Viper Room." And then the two of them go on to have a very heartfelt conversation for like the first time, probably ever. And Garcelle actually walks away from the convo feeling good about where they're going. Then Beau's closes in on Kyle for a little small talk and says, "Hey, I have a question. When you were here, we talked about that infamous text between you and PK, and you didn't want to read it. But then I had Garcelle over a couple of days ago, and she told me that you read the text. So I'm just wondering why you didn't read it to me." And Kyle says, "I'll tell you exactly what I said. It said, 'You have a lot of friends, but I'm also one of them. I'm here if you need me. You know you can trust me. I've never repeated anything you've said to me.'" And Beau's goes, "Whoop, continue to send me funny memes." And then right at that moment, Sutton slides over and says, "You said more than that." And Kyle says, "What?" Sutton says, "Yeah, in that text to PK, you said more than that." And Kyle says, "My God, this is really getting dumb. This is so dumb." And Beau says, "Well, let me ask you this." And Kyle goes, "No guarantees." And Beau says, "Can you read the text, please?" Kyle says, "Read it to you?" Beau says, "Yes." And then to camera, Kyle says, "I really don't understand why Beau's is coming from me. And I don't understand why she's taking it upon herself to tell me to share my messages with the group." And Sutton says, "You pulled out your phone, Kyle. No one asked you to. You did it." And then Erica pipes up and says, "No, we're not going to do this. We're not going to go through people's phones. You need a warrant for that shit, okay? I'm sorry. As the person who's been investigated the most here, let's not do that." Beau says, "Why is Erica yelling from across the room?" And as she does, Kyle stands up with her voice cracking and says, "I'm not going to talk about that anymore. I'm going to step away for a minute." And she gets up and she walks away. And then Beau says, "So she's upset now?" Sutton says, "I don't understand that." And Erica says, "Of course you do. People can make that into more than it is." Then to camera, Erica says, "The rest of the women are pressuring Kyle, almost accusing her of doing something wrong, and she hasn't done anything wrong by communicating with a friend. Dorit and Kyle need to have this conversation, not us fantasizing and filling in the blanks. That's how things get worse." And just for the record, she couldn't be more correct. Erica goes into the house to console Kyle, who's crying and saying that she just can't do this anymore. Meanwhile, Dorit is outside wondering why it is that everyone else has seen and heard this text except her. Kyle says, "My blood is boiling, but I'm going to go back out there." And so she storms out and she says, "I'm going to say this once. I'm only going to say this one time, and then I am leaving." But not before she starts professing about how much she's always loved Dorit and her family. And she says, "And Dorit, you know that, and I know you know that. But I'm going to read this because I have nothing to hide." And Dorit says, "Just read the text." So Kyle picks up her phone and says, he made a joke in April, and then the next text wasn't until the day you guys split up. And I just said, 'I know you have a lot of friends. I'm also one if you need me. I've never repeated anything you've told me, and I wouldn't.'" And then she turns to Dorit and says, "And I wasn't referring to you. I was referring to this." And she's talking about production. Then Kyle says, "And now I'm done. I'm done with this." And Kyle is crying and she storms out of the house, but Garcelle is still not buying it. Then they cut to Beau's, who says, "The louder Kyle protests and screams about this situation, the more I know that she is wrong." Then Garcelle echoes those sentiments and says, "Listen, does this scream I'm guilty? Yes, it does. But the girls still all run after Kyle, and they all end up on the porch where Kyle is still crying. And then finally, Dorit grabs her arm, and the two of them walk out of the gate and start walking down the road in Bel Air, still wearing their fluffy robes and slippers. Back at the house, Jen Tilly asks, what caused all this? And the girls say, listen, this has been coming for a long time. Erica says Kyle's had enough, and I don't blame her. Back on the street, Kyle and Dorit perch themselves on somebody's planter and start having a conversation. Dorit tells Kyle about the horrible way that PK would talk to her, how she used to refer to him as a monster. And Kyle has a hard time believing it because, like she says, she's never seen that side of PK. Then Dorit says, you know when you tell PK that you'd never repeat anything, that really doesn't feel good. And Kyle says, well, I'm not talking about you. PK doesn't share things with me about you. Dorit says, yes, he does. He shares things with anyone who will listen. Kyle tells Dorit again that her and PK don't talk about her, but Dorit calls bullshit and says that she knows it's bullshit because PK would come home from Kyle and Mo's house and tell her that they were indeed talking about her. Then Dorit doubles down and says, I don't know if Kyle just got so used to, dare I say it, lying through her teeth with me. Kyle says, I'm gonna go back in the house and get my stuff. And then to camera, Dorit says, this is one of those moments where I don't believe that Kyle is being honest with herself. And it's become almost like she doesn't know how to be entirely real. Kyle leaves, Dorit goes back to join the ladies, and when she gets there, they ask, how's Kyle? And Dorit says, upset. She's very upset. And Erica says, I think she feels misunderstood. And then Bose is completely confused because she can't understand why Erica seems to be supporting Kyle more than she's supporting Dorit. A few days later, Kyle, Mo, and their daughters are all at Kyle's house celebrating Portia's 16th birthday. And when it's time for the reveal of her first car, it is, of course, a Porsche with a big red bow. Imagine. Then we're at Garcelle's beach house. Sutton comes to visit, and as soon as Sutton sits down, she says, you know, I am fed up with Kyle Richards. I am not going to tolerate this. She thinks she can just storm out, that it's okay for her. Well, I am not going to bow down to the altar of Kyle Richards. If that was me doing that, she would be having a heart attack. I'm going to talk to her about this. Then we're at a day spa with Erica and Dorit. They get massages, and as soon as they're finished, they dive into a chat. Dorit says to Erica, I know exactly what Kyle meant in those text messages, and it's not what she's trying to portray. I don't believe that at all. And Erica says, you really believe that? And then Dorit looks at her and says, yeah, and I don't believe for a second that you don't believe that too. Erica says, do you want me to be honest? And she says, yeah. She says, well, then it can go both ways, Dorit. And I'm not just going to assume without any evidence. Erica says, I refuse to just assume the worst because that was done to me and I refuse to do it. Dorit says, I know you. You are shrewd and you are smart. But when it comes to Kyle, I don't think you call it as you see it. I heard you tell her that she did nothing wrong. Do you really believe that? And Erica says, I don't know, but I do think it's time for me to bow out of both of these friendships and let you two work it out. And here's the truth. I have a relationship with Kyle and I have a relationship with you. And I don't want this to be